All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, always fun to dig into some new ideas.
Yeah.
So today, we are going to be looking at something that sounds pretty simple on the surface,
Yeah.
but the more we kind of dug into the source material,
Yeah.
it really started to open up a lot of different avenues.
For sure.
And so the topic for today is vocalizing your desires.
Mm.
So, we've all got goals, dreams, things that we're working towards.
Absolutely.
But how often do we actually say them out loud?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about shouting it from the rooftops,
Right.
but even just articulating them to ourselves or to someone that we trust.
Mm.
So that's what we're going to be diving into today.
I love that.
Yeah. So the source material actually emphasizes this idea of clarity of intention.
Okay.
And I think that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can't articulate what you want,
Right.
how are you going to actually achieve it?
How are you going to get there?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Why is it so important to get clear about what we actually desire?
I think it's really about getting it out of that fuzzy realm, right? Like we all have those things we want. It could be work related, it could be personal.
Mm-hmm.
But until we really define it, it's almost like this kind of amorphous blob in our minds.
Yeah.
And when we start to vocalize it, when we start to actually put it into words,
Right.
we give it shape, we give it form.
It becomes something real.
Exactly. It's no longer just a wish, it's a tangible goal.
Right. And the source material actually gives this great example. It talks about the difference between thinking, I want to finish my project,
Okay.
versus saying out loud, I want to finish my project with confidence.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And just in that shift of language,
Yeah.
there's this added layer of okay, not only do I want to do this,
Right.
but I want to feel a certain way about it when it's done.
There's a feeling there. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not just the task, it's the emotion behind it.
Right. And that to me was like a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Because it's oh, we can actually add that level of intention even just in the way that we articulate things to ourselves.
It's like setting the tone for the whole process.
Absolutely. And, one of the other things that the source material talks about is this idea of attracting opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I got a little bit skeptical initially.
Right.
I was okay, I get the clarity of intention piece, but how does talking about my goals actually make things happen?
Right. Does it magically appear?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
It's not like, I say I want a new car, and then one just shows up on my doorstep.
Exactly.
So what's the connection there?
So I think there's a couple of things at play here.
Okay.
First, when you're vocal about your goals, you're more likely to notice opportunities that you might have otherwise missed.
Okay, so it's like you're priming your brain.
Exactly. It's like you're telling your subconscious, hey, this is what I'm looking for, so be on the lookout.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece is that when you share your desires with others, you open yourself up to their support, their advice, their connections.
Like you're putting it out there.
Exactly. And you never know who might have a resource, a piece of information or connection that could help you move closer to your goal.
So it's like you're building this network of support.
Exactly. And that can make a huge difference.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because, thinking about this whole keeping things bottled up.
Right.
We all have those unspoken desires.
Mm-hmm.
And the source material actually talks about vocalizing those desires as being a way to relieve stress.
Yeah.
Which I thought was super interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, think about it. Like holding all those desires inside, it's like carrying around this heavy weight. It takes up mental space, it creates tension, it can even manifest physically.
For sure.
But when you vocalize them, even if it's just to yourself in a journal or whatever, it's like you're releasing that pressure.
It's like exhaling.
Exactly. You're giving yourself permission to acknowledge those desires and to start taking steps towards fulfilling them.
And I imagine that can be incredibly freeing.
It absolutely can. And the other thing is when you're clear about what you want, it becomes easier to say no to things that don't align with those desires.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right. So you're not overcommitting. You're not spreading yourself too thin.
Right.
And that in itself can be a huge stress reliever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because you're focusing your energy on what truly matters to you.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to another really interesting point that the source material brings up.
Okay.
Which is this idea of combining gratitude with ambition.
Right. How do those two things go together?
Right. It might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But the source suggests that by acknowledging and appreciating what we already have, we actually create a more fertile ground for our desires to take root.
Okay, so it's like we're setting this positive foundation.
Exactly. It's like we're saying, hey, I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm also open to receiving more. And I think that's a really powerful mindset shift because it moves us away from scarcity and towards abundance.
I like that. And the source also talks about this mindset shift piece as being like a core part of the process.
Yeah.
So what do you think happens internally when we start to vocalize our desires?
I think it's about building self-belief.
Okay.
When you consistently declare your desires, you're essentially telling yourself, I'm worthy of this. I believe in myself.
It's like a self-affirmation.
Exactly. And that can have a profound impact on your confidence, your motivation, and your overall outlook.
So it's not just about speaking to the universe.
You're right.
It's also about speaking to ourselves.
Exactly. It's about aligning our internal and external worlds.
I love that. So all of this is super fascinating.
Yeah.
But I know our listeners are probably thinking, okay, this is great in theory, but how do I actually put this into practice?
Right. How do we do it?
Exactly. So the source material actually gives some pretty concrete tips.
Okay, great.
So what are some of those?
Well, they suggest starting with daily affirmations. So every morning, take a few minutes to speak your desires out loud, even if it feels silly at first.
Oh,
You're basically priming your mind for the day ahead.
right.
And then another tip is to be more direct about communicating your needs, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed or taken advantage of.
Okay. So it's about setting boundaries.
Exactly. It's about advocating for yourself and making sure your needs are met.
And I imagine that that can be a really challenging thing for a lot of people.
It absolutely can be, but it's a muscle that we can all strengthen with practice.
Right. And then the last tip, which I thought was super interesting, was to pair declarations with gratitude.
Yes, I love that.
So can you give an example of what that might look like?
Sure. So instead of just saying, I want a promotion, you might say, I'm grateful for the skills I've developed in my current role, and I'm ready for a new challenge. I want to be promoted.
So it's like acknowledging the present moment.
Exactly. It's about appreciating where you are while also setting your sights on where you want to go.
That's really powerful.
It is, and it creates this beautiful synergy between gratitude and ambition.
Yeah, and I think what's so cool about all of this is that it's not about like some magical manifestation technique.
Right.
It's really about taking control of our reality and shaping it by living more intentionally.
Exactly. It's about moving from reacting to creating, from feeling stuck to taking charge.
And that's something that I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Okay.
What is one desire that you've been holding back?
Mm.
And how might things change if you gave it a voice?
That's a powerful question. I encourage everyone listening to really sit with that.
And see what comes up.
Exactly, because you never know what might happen when you give your desires a voice.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the power of vocalizing your desires.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we encourage you to try it out, see what happens.
Give it a shot.
Until next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.